Okay, we are here today with the fabulous Rosanna DeFrancesca, Councillor for Ward 3. And for those that don't know, from Steeles to Teston, Pine Valley to 400.
Correct.
Which includes, obviously, not just residents, but a lot of businesses.
Lots of businesses, yes.
I'm going to start off with a real serious, probably the most important topic of the day. You're wearing the blue, I'm wearing blue, maybe not quite the right blue, but how do we feel about the Toronto Maple Leafs and what they just went through and what our entire city has gone through?
You know, it's a little bit disappointing. And some of us actually think that it was expected. It was almost like too good to be true if they had made it through this series, their first series. But it would have been nice to have a positive energy going in the city, a little bit of focus away from other things that bog people down every day. But hopeful for next year, I guess. But it's really an entertainment business these days.
Well, in our own family, we talk about this sometimes, and I've seen it from the podium often where a player might say, hey, it's just basketball or it's just hockey or it's just some sport. And while I understand conceptually where people are going with it, what I try and make people understand is it really isn't just sport. You know what I mean? Like sports sometimes and often brings people together, right? Like a Super Bowl or something to that effect where you get people together. And I got to tell you, even though I'm not the biggest hockey nut, my own family got around the TV and we were watching these games like when I was a little boy with my dad, back in the 70s. And, off camera, we were talking about Paul Mateer, Daryl Sittler, Rick Vive, the Wendell Clark years. And sometimes people miss that incredible memories are connected to families watching sports together. And when a run like that happens or doesn't happen, you can kind of almost see it deflating a city, right? And we talk about the positive or negative energies that are at play at any given time in our city. And there's enough bad news to go around between interest rates and prices at the groceries and gas and so forth. And that kind of leads me to my next question for you. Not even really a question, but just like your feeling, because you've been in Vaughan as long as I've been in Vaughan, and we're not going to ask anybody our ages because I know it's been a while.
Don't ask me mine, please.
But what I've found that's really incredible about Vaughan and Ward 3 is how much the diversity has changed over the years and what that means for a councillor to figure out how do I try and help all these diverse people that have maybe different vantage points of what they see going on in different businesses. What are you feeling like is like your perspective when you see that convergence of all these different nationalities moving into such a great city?
I think it's amazing to have such a diversity in a city. I think it brings a lot of different cultures, experiences, not only for us, but for our kids. I don't like children being raised in a bubble of one nationality. I think it should be diverse because I grew up in a diverse community too in Toronto. And I think that it brings a lot of different positive aspects. A game such as like the Leafs or even the championships with the Raptors, I felt a closeness that the city was experiencing, even though we're not Torontonians per se, but it brought everybody together. And as I was saying before, we were having Raptors games out in the courtyard, and it was amazing. Like people would gather and we would play, and it was just something really exciting for the community as a whole. And it brought us together as a community as a whole, which was disappointing to see with the Leafs because that didn't continue and bring people, away from the day-to-day mundane stuff that they have to worry about.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, city spirit goes a long way. I know that community spirit, like, we talk about like high school teams and so forth.
We celebrate them here at City of Vaughan in council chambers. When these kids are out there bringing home championships, Ontario wide, we're proud. We're proud and we showcase them here in our chambers and we give them special certificates. The mayor's, all in there. And I think that that's important to support our kids too in that regard, and show them that we're excited that they're bringing us honor,
Yeah, well, recently I got to live a little bit of my high school glory myself. I volunteered at Brébeuf, which is one of the schools in your ward. They were missing a high school basketball coach. And one of the students kind of reached out to me and said, hey, you're into basketball, Frank, would you consider volunteering? And I got to say, it was probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've had to see how many kids came up to me just to thank me for being there, which kind of, lends itself to what we've always spoken about, where like it takes a village to kind of raise people, and then, that community spirit and so forth. And, what's really a challenge that some of the teachers shared with me, and would love to get your opinion on what you think about this, is that there's so many rep teams now that, when we were growing up, if you wanted to play sports, largely you were doing it in the schools. Mm-hmm. But now a lot of these rep organizations, whether it be soccer, basketball, hockey, so forth, are kind of pulling a lot of these kids out of the desire to play just in school. And believe it or not, some of the kids can't even play if they sign with a rep team. So there's some of that controversy going on, where it's like, if you play with a rep team, you're not allowed to participate in school. And I can tell you that the girls' soccer team at Brebeuf, as an example, didn't happen this year. They just didn't have enough girls participating in that. And I was volunteering for that as well. So I look at it and, get your perspective to say, what do you see when you're, looking at these schools and when you're traveling around, and how, sports and education diverge, and any thoughts that you might have on that?
I'm going to just give you an example of my idea of rep teams. I mean, for some of the good players, I think it's important for them to expand, their game, and across Ontario meet, different levels of players. But for the average kid, and me as a mom, when I put my sons into hockey, the only thing I really wanted to accomplish out of that task is for them to work with a team. Because there's no I in team. So I wanted them to get that experience, how to work together in order to accomplish the same goal. And my older son was asked to join a rep team, and I just didn't see the value in it at the time. My son was a good player. He wasn't a great player. And was he learning what I wanted him to learn in this process? Yes. And so I left him in house league. So it depends on how the parents want to guide their children, but I think that it's unfortunate that the rep teams are not allowing them to play in house league, or because all they're doing is getting more practice. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that.
You would imagine, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we talk about this with friends and family as well, which is there's no I in team, and in a generation where I call it the selfie generation, obviously, where from a young age, many kids are being taught, do you, make sure you take care of you, which is not a bad message per se. As I alluded to before, it's like, to me, the reward starts to happen is when you take care of yourself, and then all of a sudden that self starts working with other people, and you create something even better together. I think there was I don't know if it was a Chinese proverb, which is like 1 + 1 is not always 2. If you take one drop and add it with another drop, you get a bigger drop. And then sometimes, I look at those concepts and say, there's a balance of figuring out how to be self-interested, how to be, let's say, selfish, but in the spirit of doing something bigger for other people. Mother Teresa is a good example. I'm sure she enjoyed helping people in a way that was an act of unselfishness, but in a way that rewarded herself. But her self-reward led to helping a bunch of other people. And I can't help but think, as a counselor, often you're put in that position, not to, elevate anybody in politics, because I know you guys get beaten up quite a bit too, but in a way, you have to be out there trying to think, for yourself, but then for a larger community as a whole. And speaking on the education front, I'm going to throw this one at you, because I've been babbling here. I was at a city council meeting where the mayor was unfortunately interrupted by a bunch of protesters. You might have heard of it, that were upset about the naming of a school because they feel that it shouldn't be named after a particular person, because you don't know what's going to happen with that person's history somewhere down the road and the controversy. And just want to get your take on, I mean, it probably doesn't even fall in your jurisdiction, but how do you feel about that? This is one of the diversity type questions, right? Where you have a large group of people basically saying, hey, we don't like the fact that you're naming schools after individuals. We want them more generic. And just get your feeling on what you thought about that protest and what you saw and heard.
I didn't see the protest per se, but let me give you a take. When I first got elected back in 2010, my predecessors in general, were just naming things off the cuff for people. Yeah. You came to council and you said, Rosanna, I want to name this ABC Park, and I would take it to council, and if I got support, it would get done. If I didn't, it wouldn't. I found that was really inequitable, unfair, and it didn't really address any possible future issues like a situation of a name, and then them not being deceased and possibly having to remove that name later on from that building. So we came up with a naming policy. So it has criteria, and you need to meet the criteria. So it treats everybody the same, and then staff scrutinize whether they could bring that forward to council. So it's a totally different way of doing things. I mean, it could go straight to council should one member decide that, but it's happening. I don't think it's happened maybe once in the last 15 years. So usually it goes through the policy.
I can't help but think, and I definitely don't want to put words in your mouth, but me personally, I can't help but feel that sometimes as a society, we might be a little bit too sensitive about stuff. And what I mean by that is, I think if we go back enough in any history, certain names are connected to certain things that, even our country, Canada. Our history's
our history. We can't change it.
You can't change it. And that's why sometimes I wonder is, I feel like while those things get the headline, the more important, pressing things that are happening in our community actually don't. And then it makes your job or our collective jobs as a community say, okay, what should we be paying attention to? I know often in my business, for instance, we call it the pacifying stage, where it's like if we're helping a buyer or seller, we know what's important, but if we don't pacify them to a certain point on what they feel is important, even though it might not impact the overall part of the deal, you end up spending a whole lot of time on stuff that was frivolous just to keep people happy. And I feel, being at a lot of council meetings myself, when I see, that dance that has to be done is like trying to keep the community happy, almost like treating them like children against their own good. It's like, I know you want all this chocolate at midnight, but I can't give it to you. And, sometimes I see, community as a whole asking for things from you or from the council that just can't be attained. And even if you could do it, it probably wouldn't be very beneficial to the community as a whole. Do you feel that?
It's always a balancing act. Like at the end of the day, everything is a balancing act. I will listen to one person and their perspective, but I will listen to 100 more in the same story. If there's 1,000, then it's time to look at policy changes to accommodate that consensus out there. I think that it's important to have perspective from a whole bunch of different people, but there's always the ones that want certain things a certain way. I move with majority. I move with getting into my community. I've never had political aspirations of some kind. My agenda is always like, okay, I get into my community. I'm there quite a bit. I attend community functions. I attend all kinds of little festivities of different backgrounds and cultures. And that's where I do my groundwork. That's where I talk to people. How are you? How are you doing? How are your kids? How's it going out there? And from that, I gauge, is there anything I can do to help this collective problem? And if I can, what are the process? Then I go back to my staff and I say, listen, I want to try to get this done. Can you help me through here? And so then it's a work in progress. But you have to set some boundaries because people will gnaw at you. They'll be irate with you. They think that if they raise their voices or they pound their fists, they're going to get more answer. I'm actually the opposite. I will not succumb to that type of behavior.
Nobody likes a bully, right?
Nobody likes a bully, number one. Number two, I want to help. I'm here because I want to help. So if I'm here and you're going to yell at me and berate me, then I'm going to leave. Yep. And I'm very honest with people. I remember being in a boardroom like this big, and we were dealing with a planning issue, and they were calling me a liar and you're not telling us everything. And I said, listen to me. I said, if you don't trust me, this meeting needs to be over.
Yep.
Because if you don't have that level of trust in me to execute your wishes on this development, then what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I'm here. Staff is here to try to hear your issues out. Can we deliver all of them? Probably not. Can we try to deliver some? Sure. But we need to educate and make people understand. And they don't always want to hear the bad stuff. Unfortunately, I deliver the bad, the good, and the ugly.
You got to give it to them
because
straight.
I need to sleep with myself at night. I need to know that I've done the best thing I can for my community. They need to understand what the risks are and how we are going to mitigate those risks in order to come up with the best possible solution for our community. I don't want someone else deciding our future. I want us to decide our future. And the only way we can decide our future is if we have control of the situation, not the board, not any other third party adjudicator, us. And so it's been hard. It's been a transition. I've had people yell at me and say, you just got to do what we want you to do. I said, but I'm not protecting you in order to do what you want me to do. So I need you to understand that if we do A, B, and C, we might get there anyway without having to pound our fists on the table. And so far, it's been a long transition, but people get my style at this point. Yeah. So I think they starting to appreciate it.
Well, you mentioned quite a few things in there, one of which, and comes up often for us as well, is the developmental part of things. Yeah. So we're seeing a bit of a suffering, if you will, in the whole brick and mortar style business. In fact, there's a lot of speculation, even south of the border, where some of the big box stores are going more and more online, which you start to see, different properties across Vaughan that are starting to suffer somewhat. And I wanted to get your input. Are you seeing the same thing? Like, are you concerned at all? Are there things that you want people to know about brick and mortar, that maybe there's a resurgence in a sector that we should be paying attention to versus the traditional? Like, are you seeing anything that you might be able to give your 2 cents on?
Honestly, I can see why that's happening, because you go to stores and there's no variety, there's no stock.
Yeah.
I went to Shoppers 3 times last week to buy toothpaste. I have a specific brand. Yeah. Never had it. I ordered it on Amazon. I got it the same day. And that's sad. That's really sad, because you want to support your local businesses, but they're not carrying the products you're looking for. Same thing with my Oral-B electric toothbrush. I was looking for the heads. I couldn't find the heads every time I go there. Why is this box here if you guys don't have stock?
So I have a similar story. I was at Highway 7 in Weston yesterday in the Home Depot. I'm building a desk, so we'll show you what it looks like after. But long story short is, I get to the aisle, I pick up a couple of brackets, and there were only 9. I needed 10. And I asked the gentleman there, and he's like, "Oh, these were returned from an online purchase. We don't stock them in the store." And I'm thinking to myself, just what you just said, the best variety of what I need to buy happens to be online instead of in the store. Now, I'm making the effort to go to the store thinking that I'm going to have a better selection. I can put this thing in my hand and, determine whether I want to use it or not. But to your point, I walked out of that experience feeling I should probably be doing my shopping online. And Home Depot is a pretty big building.
I think we're being forced that route.
And that's why I wanted to get your input, because we get asked a lot of that, right?
Route because there's better options online than there are in stores. My girlfriend just went to Sherway Mall the other day because her daughter's starting a new job. Let's go get some, blouses and pants, and let's go. She said, "Rosanna, I can't even begin to tell you there is nothing in these stores. I think we have better luck online. The problem is people don't want to be returning stuff." My daughter just ordered I said, "What is this box?" She goes, "It's clothes. I'll probably send half of them back. But if I go to the store, I won't find what I want." So that's where...
That's exactly... And I guess the question is, as these businesses find new ways of dealing with us, is there a plan, you think, for some of these, commercial side of the businesses that we're seeing in Vaughan?
I think the big box stores are going down. I personally think so. I think it'll be a situation where maybe smaller businesses might succeed if they have niches that you can't find elsewhere, like custom products, things that you can't find online in the big box store kind of shopping experience. I think that's where the future's going to come, because rent is too expensive.
Oh boy.
It's just getting out of hand. Like my kids are looking right now, and they're looking for warehouse space, and they're looking from $17 to $20 a square foot. That's unheard of. Like I've never heard of such a thing. I remember when I was looking for industrial space, we're talking, I don't know, $6 to $10 tops. Like, and that's for like really great space, $10. And I just don't know how people are to function with rates like that. I think that even that market's cooling off a bit, and it'll cool off towards the fall. I'm telling them to hang on a little bit, but it's really getting harder and harder, I think, to make a living out there.
Well, I mean,
A good living anyway, worth not having a job for.
commercial and residential get tied in so easily. And I can tell you, and this is just for, and I know you know where I'm going with this. My parents, at the same age that I was, my dad was a blue collar guy. And when I say blue collar, I don't mean today blue collar where like guys have to get a certain paid as contractors. I mean, he was slightly above minimum wage in the 70s and 80s.
Like
and
parents.
my mom wasn't too far behind that. And they were able to own a detached home in Vaughan on their salaries. 2-car garage, where we grew up. It was a humble home to us. Today, 2 well-paid individuals in the same age bracket, and I say well-paid, I mean making 3, 4, 5 times what my father's equivalency at that time would have been, cannot afford to live anywhere in the GTA. And you look at it and you say, you know, some of that anger starts to creep up. It's like you have young folks, and I say young, but I'm saying, let's say between the ages of 25 to 40, where they're both are working great jobs and simply can't afford to be in a detached home or even a semi in some cases because of where the prices have gone.
But even if you could, right?
Yep.
Let's say your income gets you there, but it's hard to sustain. And then
Yes.
you're working 6, 7 days a week to make sure that mortgage is paid. It's like, what am I here for? Like, I'm just a slave to this house. And we never used to have that.
No.
And we just recently had, we hosted our MPs and MPPs downstairs, and we had our agenda, and I couldn't help but talk about the housing market because my kids come home every day telling me they're going to move out of the country. So like, I have 2 grown children at home, a 28-year-old and a 32-year-old. So it's like every day, and we're moving out. And these kids, touch wood, okay, they have a good business.
Yeah.
And they have a brighter future than most kids their age. And yet they sit and they fester on all the problems in this country. And they sit there and say, why do we need to work so hard? We can't even live. Like, I can't even afford to have a wife and kids and all that, let alone get into this housing market. So I think that there's something's got to give here. Something really has to give in order for us to flourish. If my children, Canadian born, are having a hard time getting into the housing market, how is any other new immigrant supposed to do it?
Yeah, very hard time. And you're seeing it. People, I'm having the same kind of conversations.
And yet my parents came off the boat, okay?
Yeah.
They bought a house with my uncle. 4 years later, they bought their own house. And they kept progressing. But that dream, that Canadian dream, doesn't exist for anyone else coming into this country.
Yeah, I mean, we're a nation of immigrants, and my story isn't any different than yours, and I think countless others were. And that's the whole point. It's like my father and mom came here with nothing in their pocket, but they worked hard, and they were able to have a home and still have a life. We have the opposite happening, where these kids are busting their butt, working really hard, and don't have anything to show for, or much less to show for it.
It's very discouraging. Very discouraging.
Yeah, which is even more important why some of this community stuff to keep the health of the community up, it becomes so important. And I applaud you. I mean, our team attended it last year, movie night in the park, and I got to commend you for it. We're going to be there again this year. And what I loved most about it is seeing how many smiles were on the kids' faces. And let's face it, if the kids are smiling, the parents are smiling, right? And in a day and time and age where smiles are hard to come by, given what we're all experiencing, I think it's warranted that you deserve, a lot of accolades. And maybe you can share with people, when's the date? I mean, we're going to post this obviously and let people know, but when's the next date of this? And maybe you can give us an idea time-wise.
It's in June.
It is in June?
And I think it's the first Friday in June. Usually it's the third Friday in June.
By the time we edit this, we'll have the exact date.
Yeah, we'll have the exact date. I probably won't tell you the movie that's playing because we like to leave it as a surprise. Okay. But that was born basically a year after I got elected. I really wanted to do a community event that brought all age levels together and to just be with their neighbors and friends. And this idea was my assistant's idea. Okay. And as soon as she put it on the table, I said, yeah, this is it. This is the event.
I mean, it was there was a ton of people there. And you don't just do it in Vellore Village, right? Do you scatter around a bit? Did I see it once
I just do it in Vellore Village.
Okay.
Some of my colleagues have jumped on that bandwagon in other wards because it is a great event. And I'm lucky to have a good handful of sponsors that love to do it. Like they want to do it. They say, when's movie night? How much do you need? It's really fantastic that Vaughan businesses are giving back to their community just to see this all go down. And most of the sponsors show up, like whether they're actually doing anything there or just funding the movie or what have you. They come, they see, they really enjoy being there and knowing what that contribution does for the community. So it's all around, it's really fun. I love it.
Yeah, like I said, our team enjoyed it thoroughly. We're going to be there again this year. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's rare that you get to meet that many people in your community at the same time because, again, we got busy lives. People are doing a bunch of stuff. And you get to have a little bit more of that community socialization experience. So
you see it flipping, though. Last year, it's like all the ones that grew up with me from 2011 to 2014, you know, at that time they might have been 10. Now they're like 20 something, right? And so they're gone. So we get a renewal almost of new kids in the community, right?
We might have to do the first ever for those kids. Rosanna DeFrancesca rave in the park. So it starts at midnight. It'll still be clean, but it just starts at midnight. We got some crazy DJs out there. It might be a future idea for some of these kids. I get it. Trust me. I got young teenagers where we went from up to a certain age. They wanted to be within 2 or 3 feet of us all the time in the same room. And then they get to a certain age, and it's bittersweet where their independence starts coming in, and they don't want to be anywhere near you.
That's right.
And so I have young teens.
They'll come back around. Don't worry.
That's what I'm hoping.
They will.
Right. So as long as they come back around and my wife doesn't leave me by that time, then we're good. Because otherwise, they're going to come around and I'll be still missing a fourth wheel. But on that light note, listen, Rosanna, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. Again, just because you're always forthright on and off camera. I mean, what's really amazing about when I speak to you is like the same kind of dialogues we have on camera is the way you are off camera. And you don't always get that in politics. And even in our business, like I said, we're in real estate. Sometimes we get a natural poor stigma because of how the industry is, and politicians, I'm sure, live through that as well. But I wanted to thank you and your team and our team, the Fallico Group, for making this happen today.
I thank you guys for bringing positive information to our community. I think people need to hear some good stuff too. We all have to deal with lots of things in our lives. You know, I've got aging parents, trying to get my kids out of the house. But you know what? There's positive things to be grateful for in this country, in this city. And I'm grateful to be part of it.
Well, our industries are very similar. You know, our slogan is, you know, changing lives one home at a time. I wouldn't be the first one to coin this phrase. You know, a lot of people in politics say, you know, how do you win votes or people's hearts? One handshake at a time, you know, one hug at a time. And if you're not out there meeting people, if you're not out there having a sincerity of your community, then it's like you said before, like, why are we here? And our team always says this, Rosanna, where you choose to live and whom you choose to live with ultimately shapes your happiness or sadness in many different ways. So when I live in a community and my kids go to school in that community, I'm all in already. Like all my dollars are in this community. My kids, everyone that I love is in this community. So I have to go to bat hard. And I know you're the same kind of person.
Not only me, but even the corporation, City of Vaughan is, recreation department is busy doing events all year round. We do concerts in the park. We do Winterfest. We do so many things. And all our corporate sponsors are helping us do that. So we embrace that community spirit. We work on creating more and more of it. And we invest dollars in our staffing, and our resources come from our private partners. But those are like 20 years strong, these events, and they're well attended.
Maybe the last thing I'll leave with is almost the first thing we start with. Any chance that we can move the Toronto Maple Leafs to Vaughan, and maybe they might actually win a cup if they move.
I'm all game for that.
Right? Take down some of these big box stores, put a new arena up here, call it the Vaughan Arena, get the Leafs up here and see what happens. But on
sounds
that
like a
light
great
note,
idea.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for always inviting me.
Take care.
Wonderful.
I did it my